What is up, goalies? Welcome back to the DIY Goalie Podcast. And we are running a solo episode today. So it's just me in the chair today. We put Connor back in his cage, as he would say. um, but no, in all seriousness, Connor is actually moving this week, so he doesn't have his stuff set up. And so we're going to tackle this one solo. Thanks to him, though, for stepping in last week. We were in the middle of our goalie camp, and so I had a bit on my plate going on, and so he was kind enough to step in and take on that full episode for us. So today we're going to be talking about situational awareness and kind of going into that. Before we do, I just wanted to kind of touch on a few housekeeping things. So, as you guys have probably noticed, things have been a little chaotic the last few weeks, but um, we've got one last camp coming up this weekend. And so by the time actually this episode airs, that camp will be done. But we're kind of starting to get close to the end of getting our facility set up. So we're just kind of waiting on inspections for some of the renos, and then that'll be coming on soon. So once we kind of get through the next few weeks here, we'll start getting back settled in and hopefully get back to being a few weeks ahead with a couple episodes in the bank, as opposed to where we got to lately, which is just doing them kind of the week before. But that's okay, as they say, the show must go on, and so we're cracking out some solo episodes just so that we can keep the content going. We will get back to trying to get more guests on the show, but we'll still have a mix of kind of the solo episodes as well as the guest interviews that we've done in the past. Just before we get started, if you guys have been enjoying the show, if you're on Spotify, leave us a rating, hopefully 5 stars. You can follow the show so that you get any updates once the new episodes come out. Share it with a friend. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you can subscribe to the show and leave a review. Shout out to Neil R., who left us a review that said, "Great content from Nathan, and the guests are very informative." So we enjoy reading the reviews. We enjoy seeing the ratings that you guys leave. It gives us, that little hit of dopamine, and it also helps us to kind of have the motivation to keep going, right? And keep putting out content for you guys, because we hope that you're finding it useful. We'd love to hear from you, whatever you think is good, whatever you think needs to be improved on. You can always send us an email at info@thediygoalie.com. If you want to get some listener questions in, you can email us, or you can head to the diygoalie.com/podcast, where you can upload a text or audio question. And aside from that, just as always, you can head to the diygoalie.com to see articles, drills, videos. We do have a 26 video full goaltending breakdown course that you can check out. That'll be under courses. If you head to the diygoalie.com/courses. And as always, too, we have our shop with merch. You can get t-shirts, hoodies, crew neck sweaters, both for kids and adults. Just with some kind of, funny, clever, and also just goalie related designs on those. That helps kind of support us and, keep the lights on and keep the content going. So we very much appreciate that. Stay tuned too, because soon we'll be doing kind of season starting sale on some of that stuff too. So you can check us out on Instagram or Facebook, and we'll have updates on that. You can also join the email list at the diygoalie.com/email, and you'll stay up to date on that. And you get a couple exclusive videos too that kind of break some stuff down as well. So with all that being said, we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the episode here, because I'm sure you guys don't want to hear me ramble on. So when we're talking about situational awareness, there's a few different words for it, or terms or phrases, I guess. Some coaches or hockey people out there like to call it hockey IQ or hockey sense, reading the play, anticipating the play, kind of anything along those lines is what we're talking about when we're talking about situational awareness. Um, Back when I played, and even like at the start of my coaching career, before I really kind of understood a lot more about situational awareness, I used to kind of call it the sixth sense, right? So I experienced it when I played. Like really, when I was dialed in, you almost felt like you knew what was going to happen, and just seemed to be a step or two ahead of the play and could anticipate what was gonna happen, and make the appropriate movement, and you just felt like you're ahead of the game. You got to your spots quick, and it's a good feeling. And so I used to refer to that as the sixth sense, that goalies had. But basically, when we boil down situational awareness, what we're really talking about is just that ability to read and anticipate a play before it unfolds. And it's really all about understanding patterns, being able to process the information that you're given on the ice, and being able to kind of come up with a you know high percentage or a high probability play, that we kind of feel like is going to happen. Um, Now, there's a big difference, however, between anticipation and cheating, and that's one thing that there's a very fine line, especially in kind of the less experienced, the younger goalies. They tend to, when you see a 2-on-1 or a backdoor threat or anything like that, they tend to start to gravitate towards that pass across, and they cheat a little bit, leaving the short side open, and can kind of get burned on that shot because they've left some net open. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about more the ability to process that information, that yes, there's a backdoor threat. Yes, I'm aware that it's there. Yes, I know, if the guy's a lefty or righty, I kind of, am prepared for that. However, the puck still remains the priority, especially as you get to the higher levels. A lot of these players, the big thing that they bring to the table is deception. And if you watch a lot of the elite players in the NHL, they can be looking straight at the net and make an unreal pass through three guys back door, or vice versa, where they're looking nothing but across, to the backdoor threat, and then they rip one short side top corner, right? So um that's why, we don't want to. Yes, we can use the information that the player with the puck gives us, but we don't want to be biting on that. We want to use that to kind of, say, okay, most likely he is doing this. However, there's still the option that he could do something else, right? And that's kind of what we're going to talk about, is how we can get better at anticipating that play, and still, being able to be in the proper spot and ready for the shot, and maintain that priority on that puck. So why is having good situational awareness important? Um, the big thing is, for us goalies, we're not in a good spot when we're playing behind the play. Like if we're trying to catch up, most of the time we're late. We're going to get exposed. We're going to end up in some desperation, kind of falling back on our butts, uh, not really going to be in a good spot, right? And if like on the contrary to that, if we're feeling good, if we're anticipating the play, we're thinking one or two steps ahead. A lot of times that leads to us hitting our spots quicker. So if there is a pass across, we usually hit the spot in the proper spot, as well as being set and ready a little bit earlier, which obviously gives us more time to do the right thing, whether it's, making a save or making another movement, whatever the case is. And you know, as being in the Edmonton area as an Oilers fan, like we watch the Oilers a lot, and Connor McDavid is one of the best things about his game is his ability to see the game and to kind of anticipate what happens, like how quickly he processes information and turns that into what he's going to do. He just kind of, is the epitome of that one or two steps ahead of the play. If you watch the guy, like what he does at real time is pretty ridiculous. And so as goalies, if we can get into that same situation, that helps us to hit our spots and be feeling good about being ahead of the play. It also allows for kind of a better flow to your game too, because you know the problem is when us goalies we start to really think about what's going on, we get into a lot of trouble, and that kind of creates delays because we're trying to you know, process things at a slower speed because we're really trying to think it through. And if we can develop that natural situational awareness, that kind of helps us to make those split second decisions, kind of naturally without having to actually think it through and step by step process that information. So that flow kind of, helps us to just, again, get into that right spot when we need to make the right decisions at the right time and just kind of have an idea of where the puck might be going before it actually gets there. Um, so how do we actually get better at situational awareness, and how do we improve that as a skill? Because unlike some of the other skills as goalies, like a T push or save execution or rebound control, situational awareness is something that isn't really like a technical X's and O's type skill. Um, yes, it involves understanding systems and an X's and O's, side of things, but it's not something that you can stop a drill and say, "Oh, hey, turn your head more." Oh, or "Oh, hey, get your hands out more," or whatever, like we can do with some of the other skills as goalies. Um, so it's almost like the battle and compete level. It's something that is learned through doing. Like it's not learned at the chalkboard or, breaking it down in a goalie session. It's learned by doing and being exposed to it. And that's why, the pros and the goalies who have been playing for a while at a high level and kind of have more of that experience, they're just naturally kind of better at the situational awareness. And kind of going back to what I said earlier, like when I played, I didn't understand why I could, anticipate the play, but I could, right? Like that sixth sense. And it was because, I had played goal for almost 20 years and I had played at a decently high level for most of that time, right? And so without even knowing it, you just kind of develop that, natural ability. And that's kind of like we go back to what Pete Fry was talking about in the episode that we had with him. And he was talking about the conscious mind versus the subconscious mind. And he was like, even if you're not consciously processing information, your subconscious mind is. And that's kind of that experience factor, right? Like the more situations you see, the more your brain is going to take that information and use it for, future situations that are similar. And that's kind of how, that quote unquote sixth sense develops is, you see certain situations enough, you see the patterns enough, because I know Mitch Korn is kind of famous for saying that hockey is a game of patterns. So the more you see those patterns, the more you develop that ability to read them as they happen. And that comes from just being around the game. And that's basically what all of this is going to come down to when we really break this down. But um, the more you can be around the game, the more your subconscious mind and your conscious mind is taking in the information of a hockey game, the better that you'll be to understand those situations, read those patterns, and kind of anticipate what's going to happen. Um, the other thing, too, is we talk a lot about processing information. Um, and again, we probably say this pretty much every episode. We're probably going to keep saying this, but training our brain helps that information be processed better. It's basically like a muscle. I know technically it's, an organ, but you can train it just like you train your muscles, right? You go to the gym and you hit the weights, your muscles get stronger, or you do agility drills and you get faster, your fast twitch muscles are better. And it's the same with their brain. The more we can train it to process information quicker, the better you'll be able to do that in real time. So cognitive training, vision training, like anything that can help your brain stay healthy and active is going to help. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be hockey related. Like, I know there's apps like Lumosity or stuff like that really just gets your brain used to doing different things and reading different, patterns, or processing different information, like memory games, anything like that, right? That's what's really going to help the real time processing of information once you're actually on the ice, is again training it beforehand. And if you're not doing any sort of cognitive work yet, I encourage you highly to do it. And if I could go back and tell my younger self when I played one thing, just one thing, and that was it, if I could drop like a note or something for me to find when I was younger, it would be to do some cognitive work, because that's what's going to set you apart, is your ability to process that information. So we've talked about it a few times, but something as simple as concentration grids. You can do something like with an actual platform, like Neuro Tracker or Visual Edge. I think even Sensorina now has a bunch of cognitive training stuff on their platform. Now, obviously, those are going to come at a cost, but there's still options. Even doing stuff like playing board games like a Cranium game, or playing charades or Pictionary or something like that, reading books, just different ways to get your brain going and actually taking in information and making decisions based off of that information. That's all going to translate onto the ice to help you be able to kind of understand what's going on around you. So big thing is just the better your brain is at making decisions based off of the information it takes in, the better you're going to be on the ice and the better situational awareness you're going to have. The other thing that we probably don't do enough of, especially kind of the less experienced goalies, the ones who haven't been around the game as long or haven't had a whole lot of coaching or teaching, is looking off the puck. And I can't remember the exact number, but I know on average, the amount of times that an NHL goalie looks off the puck in a game is ridiculous. Like it's in the hundreds for sure. I just can't remember the exact number, but you need to look off of the puck. And that's how you're going to identify what's going down in zone and kind of like what's happening around you. Because if you get too puck focused, and we see this with players too, if you get too puck focused, you get a little lost. You don't realize that there's threats developing in the back door, in the slot, down low. And all of a sudden a pass happens and you're like, oh, where'd that guy come from? And by the time you figure it out, well, that puck's already in your net, right? So you need to learn how to look off of the puck and also when to look off of the puck. So when we're talking about looking off of the puck, we're talking about just doing a quick shoulder check, a quick scan, looking to see what's going on in the zone or whether it's a rush or whatever the case is. But just being able to take in that information and kind of try and see, okay, where is this going? Like, who's going where? What are my defensemen doing? Is my forward puck watching and leaving the backside defenseman free to kind of roam into that quiet area on the backside? Like, these are the things that we kind of need to be looking for. And it's just a quick little shoulder check, because if we take our eyes off the puck for too long, that can get us in trouble too, right? So we just want to do a quick little scan off to the side, get a little bit of information as much as we can, and then we're back on the puck. Um, Obviously, we have to do that when there's no immediate threat on the net. If a guy is walking towards the net and loaded up to shoot, and we take a quick look off, we're probably going to get scored on because we're not tracking the puck that's getting shot on us. So there's a fine line between, you know, how to do it properly as opposed to what will get you in trouble. But the big thing is to keep the shoulder check quick and to make sure there's no immediate threat on the net when you do it. And those are kind of the two big things when it comes to shoulder checking, when it comes to scanning the ice. Aside from player location, we also can take in some other information that's helpful. So stuff like handedness, right? Is the guy on the backside left-handed? Is he right-handed? Um, you can kind of take a look depending on how well you know your league and your opponent. You might be able to see who they are, right? Like at the pro level, for example, if you see a guy like Ovechkin or Stamkos or Draisaitl off to the backside on a power play, you can probably anticipate that there's going to be a pass over to that backside for a one timer, right? So that's another thing you can look for, and we'll kind of talk a little bit more about learning that sort of stuff in a little bit here. But the other thing you kind of look for too is coverage, like where your team is, what hands they are, right? Is your right-handed defenseman off to the side? um that kind of helps to see, okay, how likely are they to get a stick in the lane on a pass or get a stick in the lane on the shot or something like that. um so all of this stuff just kind of, like, the more information you can kind of get and be thinking about. And again, obviously, like we talked about earlier, we don't want to be actively thinking about it, but just the more information that your brain can process, the better that you'll kind of be able to recognize, oh, okay, like I can see that that backside defenseman is streaking towards the back door because my forward is puck watching and not covering them. And I can see that, oh, now the player with the puck has his head up and is actually looking to that backside. He doesn't really have a good lane to shoot. There's like three bodies in the way. Well, I can anticipate that it's very likely that that pass is going to go to that backside defenseman. And now you've recognized that, you could say, okay, he's coming down to my right side and he's a right-handed shot, so he's primed for a one-timer, right? So that's something that you can be thinking about. It also helps you to kind of hit your push better once that pass comes across, because as goalies, we want to try and beat the pass. So we want to get across and have our feet set before that shot comes as best as possible if we can. That's kind of our goal on a lateral play, is to turn a lateral play into a straight shot. But when we're pushing, because the puck isn't there yet, we want to push to the blade of the stick because that's where the threat is. So if you already know if they're a right-handed or a left-handed shot, you have an idea of where that blade is, so that when you look and rotate to make your push, you already have an idea of where that push point is. Because the difference between a guy catching a pass when they're a right-handed shot as opposed to a left-handed shot, depending on the reach of the player, that could be like a 10, 12-foot difference as to where the puck is going to end up, right? Just based off of where they're catching that pass. So having an idea of that is really important. So this is kind of the information that you want to be looking for when you are looking off of the puck. And that'll just kind of help. Again, the more information you have will help you to be able to anticipate the play a little bit better and process kind of what might happen. A big thing too to be able to find patterns in the game is honestly to just watch hockey. Like, again, going back to the subconscious mind, the more you're around the game, regardless of if you know it or not, you're going to start to be able to recognize patterns and systems and other stuff like that, and be able to get an understanding of how to play certain situations. Now, how active you are when it comes to watching hockey is entirely personal and entirely up to you. Um, you know, for any of you that listen to the In Goal magazine podcast, or who have maybe heard through the grapevine or through stories, but Thatcher Demko was one that would take notes while he watched hockey growing up, right? So he would actually watch the goalies and take notes as to what they were doing. And this is something that, again, is entirely personal, entirely up to you how you want to do it. But the more, you know, into the game that you can be, whatever that is that works for you, the better you're going to retain that information and be able to kind of, tuck it away for when you need it when you're on the ice. And that could be something like taking notes like Demko does. That could be something like, making your own play by play while you're watching the game. That could be something like if you PVR the game, you can pause it, rewind it, and then, try and break it down a little bit. Um, Whatever the case is, whatever helps you to kind of, you know, be more exposed to certain situations and to just the game of hockey in general, the better you'll kind of understand it and be able to, again, recognize those patterns that show up on the ice. Um, so whatever, like whenever you get a chance, watching hockey, and again, it doesn't necessarily have to be the pros on TV, although it's an awesome resource now that the PWHL has all of their games streamed on YouTube for free. So that's something that almost anyone can access if they have an internet connection. Um, but even just taking advantage, and we've talked about this before, but taking advantage of your local hockey, whether it's junior, whether it's college, AAA, whatever the case is that you have around you, go watch those games. Take notes on what the goalies are doing, kind of see how games develop in real time at, different levels, different speeds, see how different goalies are processing, information. And that can kind of help you get an idea of what you want to look for too. So just being around the game of hockey as much as you can is going to just naturally help promote that situational awareness, both being in the net, but also just watching, right? And again, however you want to do that, that works for you, that's up to you. Um, the other thing too that can be very helpful is getting the other side of things, getting the other perspective. So talk to players, talk to your teammates, sit in on team meetings for power play, for penalty kill, for systems. When your coach is doing a systems practice, as much as they suck and they can be boring for goalies, pay attention. See what your team is trying to do if the other team's running a 2-1-2 forecheck or a 1-2-2 forecheck or a 1-3-1 neutral zone. um, this can kind of help you start to anticipate what might happen because coaches often will give a variety of situations during this time that they want their players to move in certain ways to kind of counteract that, right? And that's kind of, the back and forth game of chess that can happen in the game of hockey. But if you can understand how your players want to move or are trying to move in relation to what the other team's doing, that can also help you anticipate where the puck's going to go, right? Like if the goal of your defensive zone is to get shots from the outside, well, then you might know that your forward is coming high on the D and running them down the wall to try and get them to just throw a puck on net, and you can be prepared for that. You might also sit in on a penalty kill meeting, and you know they might say, oh, the team that we're playing against today or next week or whatever likes to run this play. So then you can know, okay, I can look out for that, right? um the Oilers like to run it off to Draisaitl and at the bottom of the circle. The Capitals like to get it to Ovechkin in his office. There's a lot of like preferred set plays that teams have. So you can kind of gain an advantage by knowing that ahead of time. If you know what your team systems are, and then hopefully, if you're at that level, you might even know what the opposing team systems are, or at least preferred systems are. um, the other thing too with just talking to your teammates is just getting their perspective on what they're looking to do, right? Because they're going to be similar players on other teams to the teammates that you have that like to look for certain things, right? So they might say, oh, well, if I see this develop, like say it's a 3-on-2, and they say, oh, when I see the D man slide over to me, then I kick it back to the trailer. They've got, a wide open drive through the middle to the net. And you can be like, okay, so now I know next time if my D kind of sucks over to the guy with the puck, that's something to look out for, right? Or whatever the case is, right? I mean, but they have valuable information because they are obviously looking to try and get a puck past you, and it might not be you specifically, but another goalie, right? That's obviously their goal. So if you know what they're trying to do, that can almost give you kind of the information that you need to be able to counteract it, right? And to understand kind of what you can do to limit the percentage of a goal against happening. um the other thing too is just overall being able to break down the game. That's a big skill that'll really help with the situational awareness as well. And that's something that, like, because we at the DIY goalie and also our sister company, like True North Goaltending, one of the tools that we use is video breakdown. And one of the things I love about it is when I get game footage from our clients and I'm sitting there breaking down the video, um, sometimes I see things that I haven't seen before, or it allows me to really break down and be like, oh, I've actually had a couple other clients that have had this issue, but I've only ever seen it in real time. Now that I've broken it down, I've noticed this, right? And it might be something a little bit new that I haven't noticed before or something like that, right? And that allows me to now be able to look for that in the future when I see those other clients, for example, right? And the same situation goes for when you're talking about situational awareness. If you can sit there and break down a play as it happens, you get a better understanding of, how things play out a little bit. And going back to the watching hockey, when I mentioned you could PVR the game and pause it and, go back and whatever, what you can do is you can almost try and test yourself. So it might be like, I don't know, say you're working and you miss the game, or say you've got your own game and you miss the game of the team you cheer for. So you recorded it. Do a little test on yourself. And as, say, a rush is developing, as a 3-on-2 is developing, pause it and then say, okay, this guy's a lefty, this guy's a righty, this guy's driving the back door, the D men are here. Okay, well, I think this play is likely, this play is likely, this play isn't as likely, but it's possible, right? And then play it for another second or two and pause it and kind of see how it develops and say, okay, am I seeing the same thing or did that change? And then you go through the same process, play it again, pause it again, right? And that way that you can try and, give yourself that test to see, okay, how good am I reading this play as it happens, right? And then you can also try and see how the goalie is playing it too. Like, are they coming out further? Are they staying back? Have they looked off the puck yet? Right? All of this stuff you can kind of break down in real time, and then be able to kind of understand the play as it unfolds. And that'll help you, just like in practice when we're working on like a T push or a recovery or save execution or whatever, we slow it down so that we get the proper technique. And as the technique is good, then we can speed up, the drill or whatever it is. Same thing applies here. you know, as you go, break it down more and slow it down more to kind of really think it through. And as you get better, maybe you only pause it twice instead of 5 times during a rush or whatever the case is. Or maybe you don't pause it at all, but you can maybe play it back at like half speed while it unfolds or something like that. And then work up towards being able to try and break down a situation at full speed, right? Because if you can do that as a fan, right, watching a game, breaking it down at full speed, then it'll make it a lot easier once you actually get into your own game to be able to kind of anticipate how a play is gonna unfold. Um, the other thing too is you can try and, as you break these plays down, you can try and almost like narrate how you would play the situation. So if it's a 2-on-1 and you've broken it down, and say you notice that the goalie is, a foot outside of their crease, you could be like, "Oh, well, they're not going to get across, I don't think, in time if that pass goes across because they're so far out. I would like to play that a little bit deeper so that I'm still in a good spot for the shot, but it's likely that that pass is going to happen so that I can now get across a little bit quicker if I'm not as far out." Um, the other thing too is, post play. Like, if a guy is an immediate threat to the net, well, I'd want to be in the RVH there because he's going to make a quick play in tight on the net. And then you can say, "Oh, but in this situation, this guy's in tight in the net, but there's two of our defenders on him, so he doesn't really have room to get to the net. There's nobody in front because the team is changing and this guy doesn't have support. So then I can stay on my feet a little bit longer because there's no immediate in tight threat to the net." So those are just a couple examples of how you can kind of start to think about what you would want to do in those situations as they unfold. So that again, when you get to a game, your brain has kind of already thought about that. You've already kind of processed that information. So if you get into a similar situation in your game, it just kind of comes naturally instead of trying to really like think out the process, right? Which, as we've talked about, kind of creates that delay. The other thing too is if you are breaking down a play, take a look to see, you know, when the goalie is looking off the puck, and then kind of, you know, even talk to yourself a little bit. Oh, there I would have looked off the puck. Oh, that would have been a good time to look off the puck. Oh, maybe the goalie looked off, but it wasn't really a great time because they were loading up to shoot. Um, but you can also like just make those little mental notes to yourself, like, yeah, that's a good time to look off. Yeah, that's a good time to look off. No, that's not a good time to look off, right? And again, just those kind of cues repeated in your brain will allow, you know, that pattern recognition once you get into that real time. Um, the other thing too is, again, we've talked about it being a useful tool many times before, but breaking down your own game. If you can get video of your own game, and then you can actually see, okay, did I look off the puck there? No, I didn't. Well, that probably would have been a good time to. Oh, there's a 2-on-1. Did I come out too far? Did I recognize that that was a 2-on-1? Maybe the pass came across and you pushed more to the player's body because you didn't know what hand they were, and you got beat because you're a little bit off your angle, right? So these are things that you can kind of identify and be like, okay, how can I get better at reading this play? Like, what's the disconnect? And then you can, again, once you get more of that information, once you see it again in a game, it comes a lot more naturally. You process it a little bit better. So the more work you can put in off of the ice, uh, the better that you'll be once you get into similar situations on the ice. And of course, we all know there's so many variables. Not every situation is going to be exactly the same, but again, there will be patterns, right? Like, um, the saying is like history doesn't repeat itself, but it usually rhymes. Kind of similar here, right? Like you're not going to get the exact same play, but you're going to get very similar outcomes where, yeah, maybe a guy's not in the exact same spot, but the play kind of unfolds in a similar situation. So just being able to expose yourself to these as much as possible puts yourself in a better spot. The last thing we'll kind of touch on how to improve your situational awareness is just, you know, get an expert's opinion on it, right? Or see what the experts are doing, whether it's, a professional goalie or a semi-pro goalie, college, whatever, whether it's a goalie coach. Um, you can kind of watch some YouTube videos. You can do see breakdowns of certain plays. I know there's lots on YouTube for that. The in-goal pro reads are good. You can kind of see what the goalies, what the actual pro goalies themselves are seeing and talking about. um just again, any sort of feedback that you can get, especially if you're just starting out and kind of trying to figure out how to, improve your hockey sense and kind of the awareness around you when you don't really know what to look for. Getting that kind of more expert perspective can really help as a starting point. So at least you have an idea of what you're looking for, or starting to look for, right? So if you have access to somebody that can go through some of your game film with you, that's probably the perfect situation. But again, even just that general being around the game of hockey and around these breakdowns will help too. So, you know, watching or listening to the pro reads, hopping on YouTube and seeing what some of the, higher end YouTube channels have to offer about breakdowns in certain situations, right? Um, just asking questions about, hey, what's my depth like? Should I be further out? Should I be further back? What's my positioning like? Am I cheating to certain areas of the ice? Um, am I looking off the puck? Am I seeing, the left, the right handedness? Like, this is a good starting point. But if you haven't really been around the game too long, then you might not really know what to look for or the questions to ask. So it's always good to kind of get that outside perspective to whoever you can kind of get to help you with that. Um, Bottom line, as goalies, the way that we can read the play, the way that we can anticipate the play really helps us to be in a good spot when it comes to how we perform on the ice. And so hopefully you guys kind of, took a few things from this episode on how you can kind of start to improve that situational awareness, because again, as goalies, it is tough when we're trying to play catch up during the whole game. If we're one or two steps behind, I know we've all been there where you're just a little off, you're just that half second behind. And in a game where microseconds and millimeters are the, I guess I should say millimeter or milliseconds and millimeters, but when there's such a small margin of error when it comes to our position and our sport, that half a second delay can be an eternity. And that can for sure be the difference between a goal and a save. So anytime that we can be ahead of the play and kind of anticipate the play, hit our spots well, it just really puts us in a good spot and really drives success and results when it comes to what we put out on the ice. Um, that's about it from me for today. We'll put a few kind of resources in the show notes. Like if you guys do have video of your own game that you want it broken down, we can offer that for you. You can head to the DIYgoalie.com/video dash breakdown. But we'll put that in the show notes too. We'll kind of put some of those cognitive training resources again in the show notes. I'll try and see too if I can find maybe some good YouTube clips or something on some situational breakdowns too that you guys can check out. So I'll take a look and see. I'm sure I could find a couple for you guys. But the show notes will be at the DIYgoalie.com/pod020, pod020. And on that note, we've hit episode 20. So that's another cool but arbitrary milestone in our journey. But you know, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm learning lots from our guests too, and I hope you guys are enjoying it as well. We're starting to get a little bit of traction on the listenership, but again, it helps a lot, guys, if you share with your goalie friends, share it in your goalie communities, whether it's, Facebook or whatever the case is. Um, just getting the show out there, getting good ratings from you guys, that all helps us kind of, you know, keep coming back to make good content, and it really helps us out a lot too. So we appreciate the few that we've had so far. And we appreciate you for tuning in, because it's kind of cool to see this slow but steady growth so far in listenership. And it's very much appreciative to us. So thank you for tuning in. Um, we'll hopefully start to kind of get back to a little bit of a normal routine in the next little bit here. But regardless, we'll be here every Tuesday morning for you guys. And hopefully you guys are finding this helpful in your game when you get back on the ice. So or the floor if you guys are playing ball hockey or inline hockey or whatever the case is. But thanks again for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys next week.